Welcome to another ECE diagrams training video. During this session, we are going to be inserting instrument bubbles and some connecting lines. Diagrams includes all the typical bubbles users are going to need. It also includes all the typical line types too. How about we get started? Okay, so here we are back in the AutoCAD environment with diagrams loaded. I've advanced this drawing a little bit to include some more lines and some more valves since the last session. Now it's time to start putting in instrument bubbles and the connecting lines. So let's get started with that. I'm going to focus in on the control valve section up here at the top and go ahead and outfit this control valve with a pressure loop. So I'm going to add a pressure transmitter. Then I'm going to add a couple bubbles to the valve. First, I'm going to start out with a current to pneumatic converter, add a isolation solenoid to that, and then connect those instruments to some PLC inputs and outputs, ultimately going to a shared display. So that should give me quite a bit of content to show you here. Let's start out with the pressure transmitter. On the symbol library instrument and bubbles group, if we click on that, it's going to expose all of the instrumentation bubbles included with diagrams. On the top here, we have a section called devices. And within there, we have a local device. We also have a local device, but this one is intended for inline placement. I'm just going to focus on this instrument bubble, and all the rest of the instrument bubbles function just like this one, where I can route a connecting line with it. Let's get started. I have a instrument bubble that is in the middle of my cursor. And from here, I want to point out that a new section has been added to the ribbon. And this section is dynamic. Every time I place an instrument bubble, I get this new Choose Instrument Route option. If I drop this down, it's going to display all the routes that are set up within my diagrams project. So let's choose the route that is going to work best for this pressure transmitter. I'm going to use the connected route. The connected route has been set up to be intelligent. It's intelligent because I'm most likely going to have an isolation valve between the main process line and my instrument. So we've opted to make this connected line intelligent. So when I click on the line that I want to come off of, I click once to establish my start point, and then I move up. In this case, I'm going to move up 1 inch, click again, and I could continue on, but I'm going to just press the Enter key to make that second click my final location. Now that the bubble's in place, I can hover over the line and I see that it's a connected line. And if I hover over the bubble, I can see that I have a local bubble. There's no data on this bubble right now, but we can double click on this bubble and up comes the Edit Item dialog box, and it defaulted to the Tag Info data view. I have other data views here that have been set up, but for right now, I'm just going to focus on the tag info. The instrument bubbles are set up in diagrams with three primary fields. One is the instrument function. So in this case, this is going to be a pressure transmitter. The number I'm going to enter as 1001 because it's the first instrument on sheet 1000. And then we've set up the instrument tag value to include a suffix. In this case, I'm going to enter an A, and now with that, I have a complete tag number, PT 1001A. So let's just click OK. Once I click OK, then that instrument bubble is going to fill with life. If I zoom in here, you'll notice some really nice properties of the ECE diagrams instrument bubbles. We are automatically breaking the bubble when the text string is going to extend into it. So this is really nice where we don't have to worry about breaking interfering lines. Let me go ahead and focus on the control valve now and get that current to pneumatic converter on there. In this case, I'm going to go back up to my instrument bubbles. Again, I'm going to pick local because this is attached to the valve. And here I'm going to come right off of the operator. But Diagrams remembers that my last line used was the connected line. I'm going to change this to the pneumatic line because that is the line type that I need in place. I'm going to come up about 1 inch, make my second pick, and there we have a pneumatic line. Let's double click on this bubble and enter some values. I'm going to enter PY 1001 and going to enter A for the suffix. This gives me the values I want, so just have to click OK to move on to the next step. Okay, there you can see how the placement of the local bubble is made. Let me go ahead and just get some more bubbles placed here, and I'll talk through it as I go. So since I placed a local bubble last time, I want to place a local bubble again. So a convenient way to repeat the last bubble is to use your up and down arrow to go find the last command. If I press my arrow once, I get the edit block, which was my last command. If I go one more, it brings up the local device. And the command prompt gives us enough information on this command to tell us that draw a local device. So with diagrams, we don't want to start on the center. We want to start on the edge because that's where the line will start. I'm going to come up again about 1 inch and press enter. You'll notice that the pneumatic line was placed automatically because it was the last one entered. I'm not going to edit this bubble right now. I'm just going to continue adding bubbles, and I'm going to show you a very handy way to enter all this data. So let me continue with my bubbling. I'm going to switch over to the PLC inputs and outputs. In this particular case, I've got my PLC I/O and a auxiliary panel. So I'm going to go ahead and use this auxiliary back. Start here. Now here, this is going to be an electrical connection. So I switch to electric, press enter. I want to do that again, up arrow, space bar. If I just press enter, it repeats the last command as well. So let me go ahead and get this I/O point established. Now these digital inputs, digital outputs need to go someplace, and let's take them back to a controller. So I'm going to come up to my bubbles again. In this case, I'm going to use the controller. I'm going to say I'm going to have some display on my front panel, my main panel. So I'm going to use shared or DCS primary front. Now here again, this is going to be a different line type. This is going to be a system link. I'm going to link between my PLC inputs and outputs and go to the controller. So now I get the system link designation for the line type. And I can continue routing that line. My dynamic line option went away. So I have to go back to my symbol library, back to the lines group, drop that group down, and there I see the section for instrumentation. And here I can pick on the system link. And from there I can just use the normal routing commands to get from one bubble to another. And I might as well finish off this bubble as well. There you have it. There is drawing bubbles and drawing the connecting lines with all the various line types. Now let me just polish this off by populating the data. I could double click on each of these, or I could go to the symbol utility section and pick on the edit data. But there's another utility within diagrams, and that's the data manager. The data manager is found under setup, and if I click on data manager, it's going to open up a new palette. So within diagrams, we have tables and views. So if I drop down my tables, I'm going to be looking for the instrument table because that's where all of my instruments reside. And then I have various views that were set up. Here it defaulted to my IO view, but I can look in the list here and find the tag info view. These are the same data input categories that we see in the edit dialog box. So once I have the table selected and the tag info, I can now populate information within the table. This view is set up to display the symbol, so I can see the symbol type, and I can see the tag, and I can see the function, the tag number, and the suffix. Now I know all of these are going to have the same number and suffix, so I can take and pick on these values, use a key command, Control C for copy, and then I can change to the next cell and go Control V, Control V, Control V, all the way down. I'm going to repeat this for my number. Control C, Control V, all the way down. Now the next one, you may have noticed that within the window, it is showing me which bubble I'm working on. So now I have to pay attention and get specific. This is going to be my solenoid valve, so this is going to take on an XY. This one is connected to my current to pneumatic converter, so this has to be analog output. The solenoid requires a digital output. The transmitter requires a analog input. And here we have a controller. What are we controlling? We're controlling a pressure loop. So I'm going to call this a pressure indicating controller. And just like that, through the data manager, we can very efficiently populate the data. All right then, I have one last little bit to go over here, and that has to do with the very first line that I drew, and it's this connected line. If I double click on this connected line, it is void of information. It is its own line. Whenever drawing a instrument line off of a primary route like this, it's going to take on its own properties and not be connected to the line. Now, there may be situations where you want to have that line connected to the primary route, but by default, it does not do that. So let me go ahead and connect this one to the primary route because in a fabrication or installation, that little segment is going to be part of the primary route. And there's going to be an OLED or something like that on the piping itself. So I'm going to cancel out of here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of the utility command found under route, and it is the data join. If I route two lines separately, I can always bring them back together with the data join. So let me click on this. It's going to ask for the route to join to. This is going to be my primary route. And then I need to pick the route that I want to join to it. So just like that, I've connected this to the 4-inch line. But you're going to say this isn't a 4-inch line. This needs to be something smaller than that. And indeed it does. So I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of the override capabilities and put in the size of the connection for that pressure transmitter. In this case, I'm going to use 3/4 and click OK. So now when I hover over this line, it's still a 4-inch line. But if I was to place the isolation valve, and I'll come up to the valve standard section here and look for the appropriate valve, let's use a needle valve in this case, and I drop that needle valve on, we can see that that valve has adopted the override size for this little segment. We talked a little bit about that during the video on routing lines. Here we're just reinforcing that capability once again. From a drafting standpoint, I'm finished. And that's how you place instrument bubbles and the connecting lines. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me today. That's all for now on this topic, but don't worry, there's much more content for you to watch. Please browse back to support.ecedesign.com and keep exploring all it has to offer. It's there you'll find information on what's new, more training videos, technical articles, and of course, the latest software application downloads. And remember, when people learn, great things happen.